I read A Calamity of Souls by David Baldacci. This book appeared on the New York Times bestsellers list for May 5th and May 12th. And I wanted to get my review done while it was still a bestseller. But I was on a waiting list for a month, and it took me a few weeks to get through the entire 477-page book. So I hope this review is better late than never. The main characters here are either sympathetic heroes or over-the-top racist villains. First, our heroes. Our main character is John Robert Lee, no relation to Robert E. Lee. He's a 33-year-old lawyer who's won a lot of cases before, but never tried a murder case and never defended a black person before. His parents come from a working-class background, and he has a handicapped sister who's murdered partway through the book. Jerome R. Washington is a black man who served in the Vietnam War and had his leg injured there. He is illiterate, but worked as a handyman for a rich white couple who he is accused of murdering. He is married to Pearl and a father of 3, and he has no previous criminal record. Desiree DuBose is a lawyer from Chicago who's won a case before the Supreme Court before. She decided to get involved as co-counsel. Next are over-the-top villains. The 2 arresting police officers, right from the first chapter, are presented as violent and provocative and disinterested in Miranda rights. Howard Pickett is supporting the prosecution. He is a millionaire from his coal mines, which are described as having a poor safety record, utilizing strikebreakers, and polluting the environment. He is an advocate of conservative politics, white supremacy, and the George Wallace campaign. The text explicitly describes him as being arrogant, racist, and lacking in empathy. The judge presiding over the case, Josiah Ambrose, is revealed to have been a Klan member when he was younger. And he even erupts in court to call someone a filthy little N-word. These villains are so over the top I can't even take them seriously. This novel has a lack of depth. I don't feel like I know John Lee, his motivations and his flaws all that deeply. He's never left the state of Virginia, he's agnostic, and he drives a Fiat. It doesn't make sense to me that he would be from a humble Southern Virginia family. He's the son of a mechanic, yet he has very cosmopolitan views. And there's really no steps in between. Mathematically, he should have been born in 1935. But there's nothing about his character that would indicate he was born in 1935. He has none of the gravitas of the silent generation. He could just as easily be a contemporary figure in 2024. I kind of imagine him as a Southern frat boy, who aged into his 30s and stumbled his way into a court case like this. But that theory isn't really supported by the text itself. We aren't given much detail about his younger self at all. The book is very clear that it's set in a fictional county called Freeman County, Virginia, and it's set in 1968. But outside of mentioning the assassinations of Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr., there's nothing about this story that feels like 1968. The prose is not that great either. There are minimal descriptions of the setting, it's like being in a blank room. And there's not a lot of internal monologue either. And the scene transitions are way abrupt. We're talking to one guy in his office, and then a paragraph later, we're talking to a completely different guy in a completely different office. There are 93 chapters, usually just a few pages each. Once John Lee takes on the case, a lot of people mock the likelihood of success. A quarter of the way through the book, Desiree DuBose first appears. About 2/3 of the way through the book, the actual trial begins. At the end of the book, the case is resolved with Jerome being innocent, but he is shot and murdered on the courthouse steps by a teenager. It's a very one-sided narrative. The protagonists are right, and the antagonists are shown not to have a single valid point. Nor is there any consideration that they might have greater forces acting upon them. The society they are in, the society that raised them and educated them to be lawyers, is shown not to have a single redeeming virtue. And that's what makes it propaganda. This book really relies on the white savior archetype. The black characters, who are portrayed as unable to read and write, beg the heterosexual white male lawyer to defend them. It's a bit like To Kill a Mockingbird, where a black man is on trial by an all-white jury. But this book is a whole lot more dumb. I give this book a 4 out of 10.